Welcome to MsMojo, and today we're discussing the evolution of Pinocchio.
I can move. I can talk.
For this video, we'll be looking at this iconic character's growth throughout literature, film, and pop culture, spanning almost 140 years. What's your favorite version of Pinocchio? Let us know in the comments. We all recognize the Pinocchio character, so much so that he has his own emoji with an elongated nose. Anyone can sum up the wooden puppet story in a few sentences. Carved by Geppetto, Pinocchio is given sentient life, although he's still made of wood. Through a series of trials and adventures, though, he becomes a real boy.
But Father, I'm alive, see? And I'm real.
That's Carlo Collodi's 1883 children's book in a nutshell. However, there are various details from the episodic source material that have been omitted from modern adaptations.
It's a book about mischief, moral and improving stories about what you need to do if you're going to be a really good boy or a really good girl.
Those who haven't read the book might be shocked to know that Pinocchio kills the talking cricket with a hammer, he's hung from a tree, and after turning into a donkey, fish eat the skin off. This was for kids?
When you dream upon a beam, makes no difference.
Ew, a cocky road.
The first screen adaptation was a 1911 silent film starring Ferdinand Guillaume as Pinocchio. Although once considered completely lost, part of the film has since been restored. There was also a 1936 animated film that went unfinished, with only a few frames surviving. 4 years later, audiences were treated to what's widely considered the definitive adaptation, Disney's Pinocchio. This version introduced numerous elements that some might assume were always part of the story. In the film, the Blue Fairy brings Pinocchio to life.
Little puppet made of pine, wake. The gift of life is thine.
In the book, she's called the fairy with turquoise hair, and she's not the one who makes Pinocchio sentient. Geppetto merely carves a talking piece of wood. He later meets the fairy, who takes Pinocchio in and makes him a real boy. The Disney film named the talking cricket Jiminy. At the request of Walt Disney, animator Ward Kimball would strip away most of Jiminy's insect qualities, to the point he looked more like a little green man. Disney also sought to make Pinocchio a more likable character, meaning he wouldn't crush the cricket, who comes back as a ghost in the original story.
He was brash, he was cocky, he was kind of unlikable. He was a troublemaker. Walt didn't like that as he was shaping up, so he changed him.
At the same time, Pinocchio remained mischievous and naive, having to prove himself worthy of being a real boy. Although they're staples of the Disney film, phrases like conscience and wishing star are nowhere to be found in the original book. What's more, Candlewick became Lampwick, the Land of Toys became Pleasure Island, and the terrible dogfish became Monstro the whale. Disney's Pinocchio wasn't initially a financial success due to its high production costs and World War II closing key overseas markets. However, it was critically acclaimed, won 2 Oscars, and upon future re-releases, evolved into a certified hit.
You see the critics just falling over themselves, trying to come up with new superlatives to convey the idea that this is an even better film than Snow White.
Disney's Pinocchio became untouchable, although many still took a crack at adapting the novel. On television, there have been live-action versions starring Mickey Rooney, Sandy Duncan, and Paul Rubens, as well as animated adaptations like Rankin Bass's Pinocchio's Christmas.
But Papa...
Now, no more arguments. You must go to school, and I must make my Christmas list.
The best TV adaptation is probably the 1972 Italian miniseries by director Luigi Comencini. Aspects of the story are ingrained in pop culture, most notably a growing nose signifying a lie.
Now, it is true that one of the crew members is ill. Slightly ill. But the other 2 pilots are just fine. They're at the controls flying the plane.
Ward Kimball even made an independent short called Escalation, criticizing President Lyndon B. Johnson's stance on Vietnam.
Of the coming of the Lord, he is trampling out the vintage, where the grapes of wrath are stored.
As for feature films, most have struggled to get out from under Disney's shadow, the 1972 animated movie being one example.
This room is mine, so get out of here immediately. And you better not return here again.
Careful, Pinocchio. You know what happens to children who are disrespectful to their elders and who abandon their loving parents.
Some tried banking off the Disney movie. Filmation's Pinocchio and the Emperor of the Night paraded itself as a sequel of sorts to the 1940 classic.
Coming towards me through the moonlight was a band of, pirates.
Disney naturally sued, although Filmation won since the book was in the public domain. The mouse still got the last laugh, as the Filmation film didn't even make back half of its $10 million budget. Funnily enough, Disney later planned to produce a direct-to-video Pinocchio sequel, until John Lasseter pulled the plug. Little is known about that canceled sequel, but co-writer Robert Reese said, quote, "It's a story that leads Pinocchio to question why life appears unfair sometimes."
I wish I was a boy. I wish I wasn't. Ow, you're hurting me, dear Blue Fairy.
Before his death in 1990, Jim Henson approached Disney about making a live-action Pinocchio movie, which they declined. Director Steve Barron held on to the idea, eventually leading to a 1996 film starring Jonathan Taylor Thomas and Martin Landau. Reviews were mixed, and the box office returns weren't much more encouraging, but the film has spawned enough of a following to get a direct-to-video sequel.
When one wants to see me, then one tries to see with his heart, not with his eyes.
How did you know I was looking for you?
Word gets around, Pinocchio.
While the JTT film was seen as kinda creepy, it was nothing compared to Pinocchio's Revenge, a horror version that came out the same year.
How could the man who made this have murdered his only child?
Evil comes in all shapes and sizes.
2000 gave us the more light-hearted TV movie Geppetto with Drew Carey as Pinocchio's father, and Julia Louis-Dreyfus as the Blue Fairy. Although songwriter Stephen Schwartz envisioned Dick Van Dyke and Julie Andrews in the roles.
Oh, Geppetto, there is no need to thank me for the wish I've granted. You deserve happiness for all that you've given to others.
A satirical Pinocchio appeared alongside other fairy tale icons in Shrek.
I'm not a puppet, I'm a real boy.
That same year, Steven Spielberg and the late Stanley Kubrick gave the story a sci-fi twist in AI artificial intelligence. Although Pinocchio is a fantasy, the premise lends itself to science fiction. Even characters like Astro Boy or Ultron have a Pinocchio quality to them.
There are no strings on me.
In addition to AI, the puppet has been given the sci-fi treatment in 1965's Pinocchio in Outer Space and 2004's Pinocchio 3000.
Mom! Easy, Robo Boy. I ain't nobody's mama. I'm just a local fairy. Turn around, boy. Let me have a look at you. Very designed, Geppetto.
Those were pretty bad, but not the worst. For a while, that distinction went to Roberto Benigni's Pinocchio, specifically Miramax's English dub with Breckin Meyer voicing the titular character. Benigni and Meyer won a Razzie for portraying Pinocchio, although the original Italian dub was better received.
It's Pinocchio!
Benigni took another crack at Pinocchio in 2019, this time playing Geppetto. The response was much more positive, with the film scoring Oscar nominations for its costumes and makeup/hairstyling.
Come on.
Pinocchio.
Babu.
Audiences also started to look more favorably at the previous Benigni film after seeing 2021's Pinocchio: A True Story. How true? Well, it's truly awful, and that's no lie. The English dub, which features the voice talents of Pauly Shore, Tom Kenny, and John Heder, quickly spawned an online following, with some hailing the Russian film as so bad it's good.
Father, when can I leave to be on my own? I've got the whole world to see.
You are too special, Pinocchio. The world is full of people who could harm you.
Consider it the Room of foreign animated Pinocchio movies.
Hi, doggy. You're my favorite customer. Thanks a lot. Bye.
And since everyone else seems to be making a new Pinocchio, Disney might as well throw their hat into the ring as well. Directed by Robert Zemeckis with Tom Hanks as Geppetto, Disney's live-action Pinocchio doesn't stray far from its 1940 predecessor. Even Pinocchio's design is almost identical. There are a few new characters like Fabiana, and the ending is refreshingly left more open-ended.
People say he was transformed into an honest-to-goodness real boy. Did that actually happen? Who knows?
However, some critics felt Pinocchio himself was too innocent and the story wasn't greatly improved upon. For many, the best version of the past few years, and arguably since 1940, is Guillermo del Toro and Mark Gustafson's Pinocchio. A long-time passion project that eventually received funding from Netflix, this stop-motion version is among the darkest, but also the most human. At its core is a story of grief as Geppetto loses his biological son Carlo, named after the source material's author.
I have something I'd like to give you. It is a school book which belonged to a very special boy.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. As Geppetto learns to be a better father, Pinocchio picks up lessons on empathy, death, and oppression.
The wooden boy with the borrowed soul. While you may have eternal life, your loved ones, they do not. You never know how long you have with someone until they're gone.
Del Toro sets his film in 1930s fascist Italy, tying into the puppet theme as soldiers blindly follow orders. Del Toro omits the grimmest scene from the Disney film, Lampwick becoming a donkey, but seeing Pinocchio and the other young boys recruited by a fascist government is perhaps even heavier. Pinocchio becomes a symbol of individuality, showing how sometimes being disobedient can be a positive thing. Rather than try to recreate the Disney masterpiece, Del Toro creates a new classic.
Stop motion in the early days where you had the moire and the flicker of fur and fabric, even the atmospheric dust on the sets, and the imperfection of it was sort of gorgeous to look at because it told you how the thing was done.
Just as Del Toro's film leaves us on an ambiguous note, we're not sure what's next for Pinocchio, but with no strings holding him down, he can go anywhere.
He's just a puppet.
No, I'm not. I'm a real boy.
Check out this other recent clip from MsMojo. And be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.